Learning that the Khalistani propaganda meet in Australia's Brisbane has failed. The propaganda meeting in Australia's Brisbane by Khalistan sympathisers on Sunday, which they called a referendum, has failed and did not manage to gather steam as just a handful of people turned up.
From the Khalistan propaganda plies, you can see right behind me, these Khalistan propagandists have gone quiet. Their lines have diminished. There is hardly now 100 people around right behind me, and you can understand by this what it means, how the community of Queensland have shunned the idea of Khalistan, shunned their propaganda and their extremist view.
Very interesting development there. We're going to cross back over to Jitharth Jay Bardwaj, that we just saw give us essentially a report of that entire incident. Mr. Bardwaj, what I wanted to ask you more about was, why do you think that there weren't as many people showing up to this alleged referendum that Khalistanis were attempting?
See, Asha, I was there in Brisbane whole day yesterday, and in the first thing in the morning, I attended a meeting which was organized by the local Australian Sikh community. So there was around 70 odd families there, and they were discussing how to handle the Khalistan menace, because it is actually bringing bad name to them, and they're having rifts with their friends even, and everyone is looking at them as suspiciously. They were very concerned, and they were asking us that how do we tackle these issues? How do we, without getting into violence, how do we handle these Khalistan supporters? How do we bring them out of our Guru Ghars and from our lives also? Because these Khalistan supporters are kind of using intimidating tactics wherever they are going, in Melbourne or in Brisbane. Both places they did the same thing. First, they went to Gurdwaras and threatened the committees and asked that if they should be allowed to place a table there and everything. And then when people visit Gurdwaras, they kind of threaten them, force them to put posters on their cars. If somebody refuses, they name call them, they abuse them, and like these tactics sometimes work because nobody want to be called abusively in front of their kids when they are visiting their religious place. So these are the tactics which they are using. However, on the face of it, people get threatened. They don't say on the front. But when it came to this propaganda referendum, people were very clear that they are not gonna participate. So I can tell you there are almost 1,000 odd people throughout Australia. They are in Brisbane, Sydney, spread over all of Australia. And what they do is they kind of ask every one of those supporters to come to whatever place they are doing referendum. So in Brisbane also, I could find out the same faces which were in Melbourne. So they are kind of duplicating what they're voting. So there is no support for them. If I can tell you here, the voting started at 9 a.m. It was supposed to be finished at 5. However, they have to finish it at 4 o'clock because there was nobody to vote for. Another important thing, 3 times in the course of those 6-7 hours, they have to stop because there were no lines. So they kind of 40 minutes each time they stop the people to go in for voting so that they can still manage that somebody is standing outside. Because I was reporting from there and I was telling, oh, look, there is nobody to vote for. So when they were listening to those broadcasts, they responded not to let people go in, or even if they have voted, they ask them to stand there so that they can show crowd. But the general people, even the number of phone calls they made to people to come there, they made phone calls to Gurdwara to arrange buses to come there. Nobody came. So it is evident that as they are showing their violent self, people, the general public, general Sikh community is kind of closing their doors on their faces and saying, no, this is not what we want, and you have to move out from here. And the thing is, this all is driven by overseas US-based organization, which is kind of forcing Australian Indians to get into this muck. But I suppose the intelligent ones are keeping themselves away from this. Aisha?
All right, Mr. Bhardwaj, thank you so much for that response. Do stay with us. We also want to get in a word from CNN News 18's Foreign Affairs correspondent, Abhishek Jha. Abhishek, essentially, the Khalistani propaganda meet in Australia's Brisbane has failed. Only a handful of people actually showed up. Do you think this is enough of a sign to believe that maybe the Khalistani presence in Australia is decreasing, or is it too early to say?
Aisha, I would say it's too early to say because, I mean, Jitarth was talking about the depleting support base that these Khalistani sympathizer groups are now facing in Australia and maybe other parts of the world also. But the kind of aggressive social media campaign they have been involved, that is very concerning. And the various social media platform and the local network that they are using to gather their supporters and spread the misinformation and disinformation against India and pro-Khalistan is very concerning. In the context of Australia, we have seen recently Prime Minister Modi having a meeting with President Anthony Albanese, and for 2 days they were very much together. And India did raise the issue of these Khalistani protesters and how Indian temples and Indian communities, Indians for that matter, have been attacked in the past, and what actions have Australians taken. So, and there has now been an established mechanism between the two sides where senior officials or senior team has been formed, which will be in contact with each other, and they will regularly take notice and update of the situation on ground. That's what actions have been taken and what are the preemptive ways through which they can stop such actions, such protests from happening. So we can say that something that has been brewing up for a very long time between the two sides has now reached a phase where the highest officers of these two countries are very much involved and very much alarmed by the situation on ground, and they are working in a positive direction to just remove it from the root. And this is what has happened with the when Siddharth was talking that these protesters are not finding that much of support. So we can say somehow the confidence that these groups have had in the past, that might have got a sense of destabilizing, because now they know that government is not going to allow them scot-free run. Recently we have seen Australian High Commission also reacting that in the name of free speech they cannot cover vandalism, violence or hatred. And this is what the Khalistani groups have been doing in the past. They are targeting India, they are targeting Prime Minister Modi, calling him by names, and everything in the name of free speech they have been doing is also something that has been registered by the Australian government as something that shouldn't have happened. So clearly, the Khalistani protests or the anti-India sympathizer groups that have started taking some shape in Australia and other part of the world are now facing a crisis of existence.
Absolutely. Abhishek, do stay with us. We also want to cross over to